When in the course of human events,
We, the people of the United States,
All
in order
men
to
are
form a more
created
perfect
equal.
union,
I have a
establish justice,
Not
ensure
my
domestic
president.
I'm Terry, and I'm conservative for a reason. I have a special topic for today, and it shouldn't be this controversial of a topic, but it is. There seems to be a movement gaining momentum to repeal the Second Amendment. And I think the impetus for the momentum came from the Parkland shooting, when we had a bunch of high school children who did not experience life outside of their parents' home yet, telling us about the Constitution and how we should honor and live by the Constitution, what laws we should make around it. That's neither here nor there, but it's gaining momentum. And all you have to do is Google it. And just the other night I Googled repeal the Second Amendment. And I was amazed at how many hits I got of serious, intelligent people saying, yes, we should repeal the Second Amendment. Well, I'm going to give you my take on the whole thing. And I'm going to talk about whether we should or not, and I'm going to give you a short answer right now. No. Read my lips. No. But that's not fair. That's just the short answer. I'm going to give you some common sense logic about why we should not repeal the Second Amendment, and I'm going to have too much fun doing it. I'm sorry ahead of time. I'm going to have too much fun doing it. So if we're going to look at should we repeal the Second Amendment, we first have to look at can we repeal the Second Amendment. You know the old saying, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So the first thing we need to look at is, can we repeal the Second Amendment? The answer is yes. All you have to do is look in the Constitution, read Article 5. It's very short, only a couple of paragraphs. It's a little bit confusing, and I'm going to be talking about how do we repeal the Second Amendment. I'm going to have too much fun with this. I'm not going to read Article 5. You can look it up for yourself. Maybe later on I'll post it on the screen to cover my face for a few minutes. I doubt that I'll do that. But Article 5 gives us two ways to amend the Constitution. And it's been done. There is precedent. I was having a discussion with a liberal friend a couple of weeks ago on Facebook and said we should just repeal the Second Amendment. You know, there is precedent for it. Well, yeah, kind of. We enacted, our country in its infinite wisdom, an amendment to prohibit alcohol in any form. It wasn't completely thought through. They didn't realize that if you ban a recreational vice, you will have unintended consequences, and the unintended consequences were organized crime. I believe the mafia wouldn't have gotten the foothold it did if they didn't have that opening of, we're going to provide what the government has denied you. Another topic for another day. That was repealed by another amendment. So yes, there is a precedent for repealing an amendment, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. So there are two ways in Article 5 to repeal an amendment, and I'm going to talk about the two ways. The first way is that Congress amends the Constitution, and you have to understand that repealing the Second Amendment means that a 28th Amendment will be ratified to the Constitution that repeals the Second Amendment. Okay, so you don't just take it off the books, you add another amendment that repeals it. So the first way of repealing an amendment is through Congress. And I'm going to tell you how that works. First off, any member of either House of Congress, the Senate or the House of Representatives, can propose the amendment by proposing a joint resolution. Then the Senate and the House of Representatives must individually debate and vote on that joint resolution. Now here's where it really gets Good. See, there's not going to be much of a problem getting someone to write and propose this because there are staunch anti-gun people in Congress all over the place. You'll find somebody who will do it. That's not much of a problem. But when it comes time to actually vote, this vote requires not a simple majority vote. It requires a supermajority. In this case, the supermajority is the 2/3 of all of the senators and 2/3 of all of the Republicans. Senators and 2/3 of the House of Representatives all have to vote the same way. Yes, we pass the joint resolution. Now let me break that down for you. This gets good. How many senators are there? You should know this. There are 2 senators per state, 50 states. That makes 100 senators. We need 2/3 of them to agree and pass this joint resolution. Let's see, 100 divided by 3 times 2, that makes 67 senators. So we also need 2/3 of the House of Representatives to vote on this and agree to pass the joint resolution. Let's figure that out. 435 representatives, let's see, divided by 3 times 2, that comes out to 290, and my math might be off a little bit. I'm not even trying to think clearly today. That comes out to around 290 representatives. So you need 67 senators and you need 290 representatives to all agree to pass this joint resolution. Good luck. It's hard enough getting these people to do a simple majority vote and pass something of 50%. The Founding Fathers wanted this hard. Why? Because they wanted to prevent bullying. They didn't want a special interest that could control 50% of Congress forcing something down the American people's throats, so they made it hard. If Congress is going to do this, it's going to take a supermajority. That means that it's going to be demonstrated by the vote to be in the best interest of the entire country, not just one voting block, not just one particular geographic reason or anything else. So you're kidding me. You're going to get that many people to agree on something? Let me explain to you something. There are only 2 motivators for a politician: votes and money. We're not talking about money here, we're talking about votes. This is a no-win scenario because it's so controversial. Do we ban or not ban the Second Amendment? No matter what they vote, they're going to alienate somebody. They won't be voting for what's best. They're going to be voting to not alienate the largest block of voters so that they can maintain some votes and get reelected. Good luck. But listen, let's pretend for a minute that you get that far, that Congress actually agrees by a 2/3 supermajority to pass the joint resolution. What happens next? Well, it gets forwarded to all 50 states. And the legislatures of all 50 states have to individually debate it, vote on it, and the vote has to look like this. A supermajority of the states, according to the Article 5, is 3/4 of the states. Well, let's see, 50 divided by 4 times 3, that means 38 states would have to agree to repeal the Second Amendment. I'm going to say confidently that there are enough gun-friendly states that that's just not going to happen, okay? So, yes, it conceivably can be done. I'm going to say it's logistically nearly impossible. Oh, and let's talk about the second way. The second way is to force it down the throats of Congress, and that's allowed in Article 5. So what happens there, I don't know why we go further than this because it's never happened before. It's come close in different topics, but it's never happened that all 38 required states were gathered to petition Congress to call a convention of states. If that were to happen, Congress is required by law to call a convention of states. All 50 states would attend with delegates. But it's never happened, and I don't think it would happen this time. And if it did, according to history, it's come close a couple of times, and Congress always takes action when the states get close to that. So I don't think that'll happen. Historically, let's not expect that to happen. So it's not really likely that we would be able to repeal the Second Amendment. So the question, though, is if there was a miracle act of God, yes, we could repeal the Second Amendment. But the difficulty in doing it isn't even the best part. The best part is that you haven't changed anything when you repeal the Second Amendment. What you've done is made it possible to put new laws on the book because you're no longer under that specter of violating the Second Amendment. So you go through all of the time and expense that it would take to get the repeal amendment passed, get it on the books, and then you have to start a fresh effort to draft, vote on, and pass the new laws. And until you pass new laws, nothing changes. So what does that mean? You're talking about such a long-term solution. It would take so long to get this done. And I can tell you there is a movement right now to force a convention of the states to talk about term limits for Congress. It's been ongoing for several years. They've got some states signed on for it, but they haven't got petitions from anywhere near enough states. It could take years to force a convention of states. It could take years for the Senate to move, and then you still got to pass the laws. And then you've got to enforce the laws. And that's another question, and that's tough, but the bottom line is, if you want a quick solution to the problems that you're seeing in society that you think are caused by guns, which aren't, and that's another topic for another day, repealing the Second Amendment isn't it. That's a very, very, very long-term solution. So I've kind of answered the question. Can we repeal the Second Amendment? And the answer is yes. Now, the next question is, should we repeal the Second Amendment? Read my lips. No. No, we should not. I talked earlier about a precedent for repealing an amendment when I talked about prohibition in the 18th Amendment. The 18th Amendment and the Second Amendment are apples to oranges. The Second Amendment is part of the Bill of Rights. It's one of the foundation documents of our nation. This is what the Founding Fathers put together to express the rights, liberties, and freedoms that the citizens of this country have, that are granted and bestowed on them by their Creator. The Declaration of Independence says that it's the job of the government to secure those rights or to make sure that they're not violated. In this case, we're talking about the rights of life, self-defense, and liberty, being able to present a threat to a tyrannical government. And I would submit that if you lose your life to an armed thug because you can't shoot back, be it in a classroom, in some other massacre situation, or just a street mugging or whatever, if you lose your life, you can't have happiness or pursue liberty. If you lose your liberty, and I've got another video where I talked about that. Look for the video about the Second Amendment in the Founders' own words. Explains what that means. If you lose your liberty, you cannot pursue happiness. So those basic natural God-given rights endowed by our Creator of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are pretty important, and self-defense, the right of self-defense, is important to it. So listen, this is a big deal if you start messing with the Second Amendment, and I'm going to say that if you mess with the Second Amendment, you repeal a portion of the Bill of Rights, then everything that's contained in it is fair game. Your right to free speech, free assembly, the freedom of the press, due process under the law, the right to confront your accusers, have a speedy trial when you're accused. All those different things are then fair game, because we have said that that foundational document that secures the natural rights endowed upon us by our Creator is invalid. And there's just so many people that will prickle when you make that implication. So yes, we can. No, we shouldn't repeal the Second Amendment. And that's all that I have to say on that topic for today. It'll probably come up in discussing other topics. For now, I'm going to sign off. Right below this video, you can click the subscribe button and you can get my videos as I release them. You can friend me on Facebook. If you've got my email address, you can email me with questions, with arguments. You can disagree with me and we can talk about it. We can start conversations. These aren't to preach. These aren't to convince anybody of anything. These are to open dialogue. So let's have some dialogue. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.